So, I mean, Kendall Brock, does Garrett Riley need the help? Or is Dabo Swinney looking down the road at the distinct possibility that a great Clemson year with the offense further enhances Garrett Riley's reputation, and he takes a head coaching job. Now you've got Chad Morris waiting in the wings to slide right back in to be your next offensive coordinator. What do you think?
That's actually a plausible explanation. I think Dabo made it very clear yesterday. First off, let me get back to the reporting on this. Dabo had the entire state media in front of him yesterday when I posed this question to him. We visited with them. Instead, he comes out late
Oh,
last night.
by the way, guys, I meant to tell you, Chad Morris is coming back. And I've dismissed T.J. Dudley from the team.
The Dudley thing I
Yeah, go
get,
ahead.
yeah, but the Chad
Yeah.
Morris thing, that's a pretty big deal for Clemson fans who
Hmm.
remember how good an offensive coordinator he was back in 2011 through 14. Phil, I quite
Yeah.
frankly think I don't think there's any nefarious situation. I think it's Garrett Riley, but Dabo yesterday made it awfully clear when he was asked about how much Garrett is going to have to run, as you pointed, offensive coordinator to run Clemson's offense. And Dabo made that almost that as a point yesterday. He said, "Look,
No.
he's going to run his offense in well, not I'm sort of paraphrasing here, underneath our umbrella of the structure of Clemson University." Probably no one knows that any better than Chad Morris, who failed miserably at Arkansas as a head coach. He did okay, and I say okay when he was a head coach at Allen High School after leaving Arkansas. He won 11 games there, but that's not good enough there for them, so he had to leave there as well to go to South Florida, where he and Jeff Scott now have been, extradited out of South Florida. So it almost looks like to me, Dabo had an opportunity, as you pointed out yesterday, with the expansion of college coaching staffs. Hey, here's a guy I know very well, probably looking for something to do, have a purpose. He can come in here and help our team. Not necessarily to look over the shoulder of Garrett Riley and say, "No, I'm not sure I'd do that." No, that's a good idea, but I don't think there's anything like that. I just think it's a guy giving a friend of his another opportunity to come back and coach at a place that he was awfully successful.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But you know me, I'm always looking at angles. Why
Mm-hmm.
does something happen? Why does this happen? Why do you do this? And you never know how people are going to react. How do you think Garrett Riley's reacting? I mean, is it like, okay, well, I appreciate the help, bring him on in, and we'll work together, and he'll add something to it? Or, you know, does he look at over his shoulder at an older coach who had a lot of success at this program? And
Right.
let's just say, devil's advocate, let's just say for whatever reason, there's a bit of a struggle out of the gates. The offense isn't, you know, scoring 35, 40 points a game, whatever Clemson fans have in their minds about what it should be scoring. And now you hear the rumblings, well, let's make Chad Morris the offensive coordinator. He's right there. We can just go ahead and promote him in. See what I'm saying? You just
Mm-hmm.
never know how people are going to react. I just thought it was, hey, I guess you bring in whoever you can get your hands on if you know them and you trust them and you think they can be an addition to your staff, and that is what they have done.
Well, it
So
seemed to work
let's go
when
to.
I would add one other point about that. It seemed to work when Ted Roof came in a similar circumstance to help Brent Venables, right? I mean, clearly Brent Venables needed no help. He could have coached that defense almost. I'm sure he thinks by himself and done as good a job as he did. And now Venables has Ted Roof on his staff out at Oklahoma. So I mean, maybe Dabo's looking. Hey, I tried this before. Bring in a veteran coach as sort of a volunteer assistant. It helped. It worked with
Mm-hmm,
Brent Venables.
mm-hmm.
Maybe the same scenario here. Now I realize Venables was a little more entrenched at Clemson when Roof came into the fold. But maybe that's a scenario that Dabo said, well, that worked on the defensive side. Let's see if it'll work on the offensive side.
All right, now let's go to the story on the AJC and Georgia, as we talked about, as this thing has been playing out since the June 27th publication of the original story by the AJC, two powerful bodies in the state of Georgia, and Georgia demanding a retraction. They did not get the retraction. In their statement today, the AJC said they would not be retracting the story, but they would be re-editing the headline, and they would be, I should say, editing the headline, and they would be editing the story and deleting a couple of parts of it that they found after further investigation, they found not to be accurate, and they fired the writer Alan Judd, who isn't a sports writer for them. He's an investigative reporter. I had a guy tell me today, and I don't have this confirmed by anybody, but he has friends who work at the AJC in the sports department, and he was told that the sports writers in the AJC were caught totally off guard by this story, that they didn't
Wow.
know that another part of the paper was doing this investigative report on Georgia from a sports angle, from the standpoint of the football team. So I can't verify that. He could, I mean, he was just passing on to me what he had heard from some people he knows who work with the AJC in the sports department. But anyway, be that as it may, the uh, the parts that the AJC fixed, the headline, they added the word two players, the words two players to the headline to narrow things down, because the headline before was more wide open, just using the word players, and they narrowed it down, went back and specified it to two players because that's what they had written about. And then another point that was made by Georgia in refuting the story was the claim of 11 players at Georgia had various accusations made against them of sexual assault, and these players were still able to play and were not punished by Georgia and weren't dismissed from the team. And Georgia refuted that number, saying that they had no proof, that they had not proven that 11 had actually had that situation. Where's your proof? And apparently the AJC editors went back, looked at that, looked at their information, determined that that was a plausible argument by Georgia, and agreed to take that out of the story. Um, you go back and read the news story that the AJC put out today with those changes, and it basically still says the same stuff, still kind of makes the same claims against the Georgia program, still has in there the reporting about what happened in the courtroom with one of the players, still has in there the expansive story on the recruit and his doings on his official visit and things like that. That never changed. Uh, None of the other claims made in the story about Georgia and the handling of things in the Georgia program were changed by the paper, just those particular things. So, again, it goes back to who you want to believe, what you want to believe. I am stunned. As I said way back when this came out, I would think that before you put a story out like this, everything is nailed down to the point where you are absolutely confident from a journalistic standpoint and a legal standpoint that there is nothing that anyone can pull out and prove that you're reporting it wrongly, that everything has been, double checked, cross checked, et cetera, by every aspect of that paper and that organization, because this is such a volatile story. So they really dropped the ball on that, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
by letting that story go out the way they did and not having it nailed down 100% to where they wouldn't be put in this position. You have to blame the editors. You have to blame the legal people. I guess you run it through legal. How did they not catch this? How did they not vet all of this before they put it to print or put it on the internet?
It's a great question. It really is. And if you were ever wondering, the most powerful person in the state of Georgia is not Brian Kemp, the governor of the state. It's Kirby Smart, because they got their pound of flesh today. They got the guy who wrote the story, the scathing report that aired Georgia's dirty laundry. They got him fired basically today. But I'm like you, Phil. This to me is not just on Alan Judd. This is all the way up through the chain of command at the AJC, because surely he didn't just say, "Hey, I'm about to publish this story. Do y'all want to read it?" Okay, no, here, and it's published. I'm pretty sure.
do,
I'm
y-
pretty
do
sure.
y'all do y'all want to read this before I hit publish?
Like, you give us a lot
Oh
more
my!
freedom to do that on SportsTalkSC.com than the AJC
Yeah.
would in this regard. I find the figure, though, that they used 11 athletes accused of sexual assault and domestic violence. That's the one that they couldn't necessarily prove, and they narrowed it down to 2. 11, though, sounds like a really weird sort of precise number, doesn't it? I mean, it wasn't like between 10 and 15 or 10 and 20 players were, kept on the team even though they were accused of these kind of crimes against women. 11 just seems like that's almost a direct number that you would seem it could be verifiable. And I just wonder why the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Well, I know why, because they do not want to upset the University of Georgia, and especially the football program, because they realize
Mhm.
that's subscriptions and that's money into their pockets. And evidently, they did not want to stand up and protect the writer of this story when he's not the only one that should be culpable in this. It should go all the way up through the news editor and everybody else at that paper for not vetting all this stuff out across the board. But still, I go back to my original question. Let's assume 11 is not correct. It's 10 the number. It's 9 the number. So they didn't dispute. There were 2 football players that are accused of sexual assault and or domestic violence that were kept on the team. Correct? Because that's what they put out today. They were able to verify
Correct.
that. Where's Georgia's
Hmm.
response to that? Plus, not to mention uh, the heinous amount
Oh
of
well,
crime.
their response is. I'll tell you what the response is to those 2 players. No, only one player is still on the team. The Anderson player was dismissed from the team after the allegations, and after he was dismissed from the team, the allegations against him were later dropped. He was accused of rape. Um, those allegations were later dropped, and now the Jarrett kid is still on the team. He was the high school recruit, and they say the reason he was never dismissed or punished was that there were no charges ever brought. The Athens Police Department looked into that story, looked into the allegations, et cetera, and did not find enough evidence to pursue an investigation or any kind of charges or an arrest. So Georgia is like, okay, nothing to see here. You can't punish a guy if he's not charged with something.
Sure.
So there you go. There's your answer.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. But my
Hmm.
question still stands. All right. Somewhere between 11 and 2 is probably the truth, right? At least in my mind, because I don't think Alan Judd would have just made up that number. Somebody he found, someone told him that was the correct number to put in. And that to me is the one figure that I was really surprised the AJC did not do a better job of perusing and researching and verifying every single one of those allegations before it went to print. But also, this still doesn't answer the questions about the numerous amount of tickets and the speeding violations and the 2 deaths around the program with regards to high-speed chases and drag racing and everything else that we have read so far. The University of Georgia still is not clean in this at all, in my mind. And the AJC, I posed you a sort of hypothetical a bit earlier today. Let's assume this exact same scenario happened at Coke, probably the biggest employer I would think in the state of Georgia, with maybe the exception of the University of Georgia, but certainly one of the mainstays in that state and certainly in Atlanta. Would Alan Judd still have a job today? Would the AJC have gone back and rewritten a story if it were at Coke?
Hmm.
Or are they just
Yeah.
scared to death to lose contact with the University of Georgia and their football program because of what they've accomplished on the field over the last couple of seasons?
Well, I think you nailed it earlier when you said they got their pound of flesh
Mm,
for the fans because, I mean, I think that firing the writer will calm the waters. That's who was the dude in the Bible got thrown in the ocean to calm the waters? That's their guy being thrown in the ocean. Who was that guy? Help me out here, biblical scholars. That was, he got eaten by the fish. What was
oh,
his name?
Jonah,
Anyway,
Jonah and the whale.
yeah, that's it. Jonah. Yeah, that's their Jonah. He threw him in the water to calm the waters because obviously the Georgia fans were up in arms, and you know what? We also have to point out that the story by UGASports.com, the website, the Georgia fan website, with their story in which they pointed out that the writer had another issue when he was at Louisville, and then they had a copy of the Georgia 9-page letter to the AJC and went through it. I mean, you wonder if they had not reported all that, if they had not had access to all that information and brought all that to light, would the AJC had ever gone back and looked this thing over again and found the errors that needed to be corrected. I will say this too. I went back and read that story again today. And by the way, the new headline that the AJC put on the paper, on that story, and the changes, the subtle changes that they made. I wanted to point that out, and I had it here just a moment ago. Here it is. Yeah. So the original headline from the 27th of June, UGA football program rallies when players accused of accusing women. That was the headline. The new headline in today's corrected version of the story, UGA football program rallied in 2 incidents when players were accused of abusing women. So they narrowed it down to those 2 cases instead of making it broad. I will say, in going back and reading the story again, the writer, he took in several paragraphs, he used a very subjective approach to things, not an objective approach. He put some generalities in there, I thought, in going back and looking at it, that you, as an investigative reporter, I don't think you should be writing in those kind of generalities and subjectivity. Everything should be hard, cold facts, and not subject to interpretation by the writer in this case. It's not a column piece. If it were a column piece, I'm sorry, interpretation by the reader. It's not a column piece. In a column piece, you can insert your opinion. You can use subjective writing instead of objective writing. I think he did some of this with some of the stuff that he wrote. But does it take away? Does it make Georgia look a little bit better that they had to change what they had to change? I mean, again, in the updated story, they left the bulk of the previous story in there. It does diminish to some degree, I guess, what the writer was trying to report. But again, one case is one case too many. But it doesn't make it now sound like it's widespread chaos within the Georgia football program when it comes to this. Do you think this helps Georgia's image, or has it been irreparably damaged?
Irreparably, probably not. I don't know how it necessarily helps their image. There were still 2 issues that they had to deal with, and as Keith tweeted at when you wrote the revised headline, as Keith pointed out on our Twitter page at SportsTalkSC, he said that's a difference without a distinction, and I think he's right. I mean, UGA football program rallies when players, or 2 incidences when players. It's the same thing. Players plural is 2 or more, right?
Yeah. Okay, that's just part of what we've had going on today here on Sports Talk. When we come back, update you on some other things. Will Sanders has signed his contract with the Cubs, getting about $600,000, and we'll hear from Nick Saban.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
And here's tonight's forecast. Muggy this evening with a low temp dipping to 74. Tomorrow, increased humidity and a feels like temp of 101 to go with an actual high of 93. There's a 30% chance we get some afternoon downpours. Friday is the week's hottest day with a high of 96, and rain chances increasing to 40% in the afternoon. Brian Leonard with your On Point local weather.
Why just talk about something? Why not just do it? I went online to DominionEnergy.com/SC. Signed up on the Save Energy tab to have these folks come on out, haul away my old refrigerator for free. Oh, and by the way, they paid me $50 to do this. It was easy. They showed up on time, threw the old fridge on a cart, they hauled it away. I didn't have to do a thing except sit and wait for my check. A couple weeks later, I got my check, made space getting rid of an old appliance I wasn't even using. It's that simple. Go to DominionEnergy.com/SC. Sign up today.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters reporting authorities say a tornado has heavily damaged a large Pfizer pharmaceutical plant in North Carolina. Pfizer confirmed in an email that the large complex in the Rocky Mount area was damaged by the twister that touched down there on Wednesday afternoon. The company reported no serious injuries and said it was assessing the impact on production. Family members of the U.S. Army private who sprinted across the border into North Korea say he may have felt overwhelmed as he faced legal troubles and his possible looming discharge from the military. Relatives described 23-year-old Private Travis King as a quiet loner who did not drink or smoke and enjoyed reading the Bible. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 109 points, the Nasdaq rose 4, the S&P 500 advanced 10, oil down 40 cents to $75.35 a barrel. More details at srnnews.com.
Yeah,
Fran Halloran here. Now listen closely to what I'm about to say. I'm a business owner, and many of you listening right now, you're business owners as well. The first rule in owning a business is this: don't waste money. I see business owners waste their marketing dollars all the time. Not me. I figured out a long time ago, 8 years ago to be exact, that spending my marketing dollars at the point was not only intentional, but extremely profitable as well. If you're a small business owner, you owe it to yourself to sit down with Kevin Cohen and ask him to create a custom marketing plan for your business. He's looking for folks just like you who believe in local to partner with him in 2023 and beyond. Trust me when I tell you, partnering with The Point works. You will see results and your marketing budget will no longer be wasted. Give Kev a call at 803-563-8558 and tell him the Money Coach sent you.
Summer in South Carolina. No better time to celebrate your number 6 of Pick Me SC with Columbia Animal Services. Take advantage of free adoptions from July 14th through the 22nd. Take a peek at petfinder.com to see all the great dogs and cats available to come home with you. It's the best time of the year for you to be a hero and adopt. Visit petfinder.com and bring your fur baby home.
Hey, this is Paul Romanstein, proud owner of Midlands Landscape and Lawns. Is it time for a new lawn? You need to start with a smooth grade done right. Then a must is a new Rainbird irrigation system that comes complete with a 1-year warranty. We will then help you know what turf is right for your yard. Tiff Tough Bermuda is a great turf for full sun. Then let the pros maintain your whole property and keep your new grass green and healthy and weed free. At Midlands Landscape and Lawns, we hate weeds. So that's why you can find us at hateweeds.com. hateweeds.com.
Hey, Kev here. One thing that's truly unique about The Point is you. We call our listeners the Point family. You've stayed so loyal. You've stayed so supportive. Thank you for that. We call The Point Columbia's local talk radio experience. We're community driven. We push hard for our advertising partners because they're mom and pop businesses, small business owners. People ask me all the time, how can we help you with The Point, Kev? Well, it's pretty simple. Support those who support us. If you hear an advertising partner here on The Point, use them. Support them. Brag to them that you're there because you trust The Point. If you're a local small business owner, I'd love to have you as part of our lineup. Give me a call. Tell me your story. I'll create a customized advertising package that fits your budget and your needs. Nothing corporate, nothing cookie cutter. Look, if you haven't tried radio, it does work, especially here at The Point. Give us an opportunity to share you with our Point family. Call me. 563-8558. That's 563-8558. Or email me directly, kev@makethepointradio.com. I sure hope we could partner up. Join the Point family.
Dumpster Plus is your solution to a more cost-effective and professional work site. Dumpster Plus provides a roll-off dumpster and porta-john in one. Give them a call at 803-500-5094 and ask them about 2 services for the price of one. It's 1 call, 1 delivery, 2 services. Locally owned and operated in Columbia, and that means you'll talk to a real live local person, ready to get what you need with a 24-hour turnaround guaranteed. Whether your worksite is residential or commercial, big or small, near or far, you'll save money with Dumpster Plus. Waste management solutions never look so good. Call Dumpster Plus at 803-500-5094. That's 803-500-5094 for Dumpster Plus.
Back on Sports Talk here on the Sports Talk Media Network from day 3 of Media Days here in Nashville. Glad to have you with us. Phil Kornblut, Chris Bergen, and Pat Daniel. And before we move forward, Pat, you had a little something to add about Chad Morris returning to Clemson.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with one of the 2 options you gave. And where I'm going with this is that they are bringing him in. If we look back over Dabo Swinney's tenure at Clemson and we look at the history of offensive coordinators, let's start with the departure of Billy Napier and then when they brought Chad Morris in. Well, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if I have my timeline wrong here, but it was my my impression that over the years, a lot of folks, I think ourselves included, have kind of looked at Chad Morris as the quote unquote architect of the Clemson offense. Is that fair to say, you think?
Yeah, I would say so, though, as Chris pointed out, and what Dabo said yesterday is no different than what he said when Chad Morris was there. It's a Clemson offense
Right.
because he was asked about whenever we would use the terms, Chad Morris offense, he would say, no, it's a Clemson offense.
Right.
So,
And
yeah, I guess the same thing applies now.
Right. And where I meant with that was Chad Morris may have been the architect. And I'm not saying it was the Chad Morris offense. He was the architect, in my view, of what became known as the Clemson offense. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like it drastically changed once he came on board versus his predecessors, versus the Billy Napiers and the Rob Spences, et cetera, et cetera. Well, where I'm going with this is Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott were then brought on board or were already there and kind of shadowed Chad Morris so as to learn the offense, because Chad Morris early on gave indications that his future, he would like to become a head coach. He did not want to be a coordinator forever. I don't think he ever hid that fact. He always was open about the fact he had bigger aspirations than being an offensive coordinator. So Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott came in to learn that offense. Well, then Brandon Streeter kind of did a similar type thing as the QB coach and wide receivers coach after Jeff Scott left under Tony Elliott. So he then was learning the Clemson offense in case Tony Elliott left. Jeff Scott had already left. Well, now with the departure of Brandon Streeter, Dabo, who in this capacity is acting more as a CEO. Let's face it, he's not an X's and O's guy, and I don't mean that offensive. I mean that in a good way. He is more of a CEO of the Clemson program than a coordinator. He's not necessarily an offensive or a defensive guy, even though his background was as a wide receivers coach. So he's acting as the CEO here, and that part of that job means you have to play chess, not checkers. You're having to look from all angles and think multiple moves ahead, and part of that is if you were bringing in a guy of the caliber of Garrett Riley, now he may not be his brother yet, but a lot of folks around the country seem to think that he may not be an offensive coordinator but a few more years because, again, to your point, if he comes in and gets Clemson back around that 40 points per game threshold for a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 max, but I would think more likely 1 or 2 years, he's going to have a lot of big programs out there come calling his name. He may eventually depart. Dabo has to think ahead. Well, what do? I don't want to get caught with my pants down. I got to have a backup plan. So I can go ahead and bring in, whether it's Chad Morris, he's out of coaching right now or has been after he spent that year at Auburn. Maybe he wants to come back to Clemson. We have a familiarity there. We've worked together there. He now needs to come in and be tasked with learning what is becoming the new Clemson offense. And that may be, in my view, what Garrett Riley is doing. He is bringing in what is his offense, which now may become the future, quote-unquote, Clemson offense. So Dabo has to find guys underneath him to learn that in case of the future when he inevitably departs to then be able to slide in that role. We think Jeff Scott might be out of coaching. He had said so this year. He's taken a year off. We don't know yet what the future holds there, but bringing Chad Morris in, to me, makes a lot of sense. He and Dabo have worked together. He's familiar with the area. He can come in and kind of shadow Garrett Riley. I would certainly hope he'll be hands-off because, to your point, I can't see Garrett Riley taking too kindly to there being too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. This is his show, nobody else's, but that doesn't mean somebody else can't shadow him and learn for the future. So in my mind, that is the reason you bring Chad Morris in, is to go ahead and have a plan for 3 or 4 years down the road.
All right. Very good. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, let me mention a couple of other things here. Mentioned that Will Sanders signed $600,000 with the Cubs, so he's off to his pro career. How about this? The Northwestern story continues. It grows. It's spreading through multiple other sports at Northwestern, and it's touching ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips, who was the AD at Northwestern for a long time. During the time, I guess, some of this stuff was going on, and he has been named a defendant in a second lawsuit. And lawyers for some players there at Northwestern say they've learned of more misconduct in the softball and volleyball programs. And so now Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, is being brought into the fray here as well. Also, On3 obtained briefing documents from when an SEC contingent visited Capitol Hill last month to talk about NIL, and two little quick points that they wrote about. One, the NCAA cannot fix this. This is from the SEC to the members of Congress. The NCAA cannot fix this, and there is concern about administration of athletic departments shifting to collectives. Concern about administration of athletic departments shifting to collectives. So those were two of the concerns from the SEC contingent. And this, I think this is the note of the day, guys. The note of the day. You ready, Chris?
I am.
During Live Golf's merger negotiations with the PGA Tour, the Saudi PIF, the money people, proposed the following. Saudi billionaire and PIF governor Yasser Al-Rumayyan to receive a membership at Augusta National and the R&A. That proposal was cut from the negotiations. So they wanted him to become a member at Augusta National and a member of the R&A. Now, could you see that happening?
No, and I'm glad Augusta stood up and said no, and I'm glad the RNA did as well. I'm curious, though, that they actually go to the leaders at both of those organizations initially and say, this is what is going to happen. We want this. We demand this. Or did they think before they even bothered to show up in Augusta and also in Scotland, no, let's leave that off the table. Now, you wonder how much longer it's going to be before that actually becomes reality. But as of right now, good for it. If they actually talk to them at Augusta and at the Royal and Ancient, and they said no, good for both of those groups.
Yeah. So my instant poll question after David Hood of TigerNet broke the news about Chad Morris coming back to Clemson, and I put this out this afternoon, 3 answers to the poll question. What was your reaction? You, the reader, what was your reaction to that news? Be a great help to Riley. Why does Riley need help? New OC when Riley leaves. 36.4% say it'll be a great help. 34.3% new OC when Riley leaves. 29.3% why does Riley need help? So it's kind of split among those 3. And I don't know. I think my first reaction was, if I were answering this poll question, I think my first reaction was, why does Riley need help?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but then again, I think B would be, as I mentioned and Pat mentioned, the idea that if Riley walks after one season, you got a guy ready to step in and be your offensive coordinator once again.
You know, and to that end, Phil, unless let's say his brother leaves Southern California and that job opens up, or Texas opens up, or one of the gigantic Notre Dame opens up, one of the gigantic programs in the country, and they come after Garrett Riley. I got the sense yesterday he's actually glad to be able to sit and take a break and stay at one locale. Keep in mind, the last 2 years, he's had 3 different jobs. He's worked at SMU, worked at TCU, and now at Clemson. I'm not so sure he wants to uproot his family again in a year's time. So my guess is Tiger fans probably have a reprieve, regardless of what happens with their team this year, with Garrett Riley coming back for a second season, assuming one of those just massive college football jobs opens up that he can't turn down.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think his plan was to come to Clemson and stay for a little while. He's got a young family. Yeah. Based on some of the Twitter pictures he has put out, he's loving it up there. He's a big fisherman, and he's loving fishing up there at the lake and everything else. So, yeah, I would see why he would want to plant some roots for a little while. But he is also, like everybody his age in football, in coaching, aspiring to be a head coach and running his own program. And if a great opportunity comes his way after this season, you wouldn't be shocked if he decided to go ahead and take it. Okay, let's hit the break. And when we come back, we're going to hear from Nick Saban. It's a little strange here in Nashville. We didn't have the hundreds of Alabama fans waiting outside for the arrival of St. Nick. Yeah, there was a clown dressed up as a clown. Some guy really was over the top with his Alabama costume. I'm sure Nick was excited to see him. So we'll hear from him when we come back from the break. Don't leave us here on Sports Talk. Be right back.
We've got rates worth bragging about. Founders Federal Credit Union is offering our 12-month certificate at a 5.04% annual percentage yield, or APY, and our 12-month IRA certificate at a 5.30% APY. Don't miss this opportunity. A $500 deposit is all it takes to make these great rates work for you. Rates accurate as of June 1st, 2023. Learn more at foundersfcu.com/dividend-rates. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. Membership qualification required. Federally insured by NCUA.
George Bryant here for Tsunami Bar Sports, and some say the fun is in the winning. I say the fun is in the training. And Tsunami Robbie, what do you say?
George, we all know you get more done when you're having fun. This technology is different. It's engaging, but it's also a lot of fun to use.
Hi, this is Phil Kornblut. Be sure to click on the digital ad on SportsTalkSC.com and get 5% off any Tsunami Bar order using promo code BBB5. Don't wait, order today.
Hi, this is Major Billy Downer, and coming up tonight at 7:30, it's another edition of SC Wow from the Department of Natural Resources on the Sports Talk Media Network.
If you're looking to stay hydrated this summer, turn toward a southern favorite, sweet South Carolina watermelons. One slice is equivalent to a glass of water and is just as effective as sports drinks for hydration. If you don't believe us, you can ask the Palmetto State's top football teams. The SC Watermelon Association will be serving up slices after summer practice to keep our teams fueled and hydrated. Visit scwatermelon.org for all the details and look for ripe South Carolina watermelons in your hometown. Dumpster Plus is your solution to a more cost-effective and professional work site. Dumpster Plus provides a roll-off dumpster and porta-john in one. Give them a call at 803-500-5094 and ask them about two services for the price of one. It's one call, one delivery, two services. Locally owned and operated in Columbia, and that means you'll talk to a real live local person, ready to get what you need with a 24-hour turnaround guaranteed. Whether your worksite is residential or commercial, big or small, near or far, you'll save money with Dumpster Plus. Waste management solutions never look so good. Call Dumpster Plus at 803-500-5094. That's 803-500-5094 for Dumpster Plus.
Have you turned on the fun? Try Cashpot from the South Carolina Education Lottery. Pick one number from 1 to 15, win up to $2,500, or play all 15 numbers, and you're guaranteed to win. Play twice a day to double your fun. It really is that easy. Visit sceducationlottery.com to get the details. Cashpot. It's the light of the party.
We are back on Sports Talk. Going to hear from Nick Saban in just a moment. You know, summertime is rolling on. Not too late to get down to the beach for a great weekend getaway, or maybe a stay of longer period of time, like a week or a month or months, whatever the case may be. Whatever you're looking for, make sure you look up Jimmy Smith at James Smith Realty. Let Jimmy and his folks there help you find whatever it is you're looking for, whatever fits your budget and fits your needs. They'll find it for you, and they'll find it quickly. Their phone number, write this down, 843-237-4246, 843-237-4246. The website, pauliesvacationrentals.com. And keep in mind, you want to buy some property at the beach. You want to buy a house that's already up, maybe buy some land to build a house. They can help you out that way as well, too. That phone number again, 843-237-4246. For your perfect beach getaway. Should also mention that former USC shortstop Braylon Wimmer signed his pro baseball contract. I think that came down last night with the Rockies, and eighth rounder, he got $157,000 in his deal. Okay, so we're back here at SEC Media Days, day number 3. one of the coaches to come through, Nick Saban, Alabama, always expecting to win the national championship, 11-2 last year. Have to replace a great quarterback, but they have a very good quarterback who transferred in from Notre Dame. And, of course, they have plenty of other nice pieces to work with on this team this year. Questions and answers. Here we go for Nick Saban.
Hey, Coach. Good morning. Taylor Kaufman with CBS 42 in Birmingham. Alabama has some question marks around it going into this year, but we saw that a couple of years ago, and you guys ended up with a Heisman quarterback, SEC championship, and a trip to the national championship. Do you kind of like when the media and fans have some question marks about you guys, opposed to headlines that maybe read you guys are a shoe-in for the championship?
Right. Well, we're never a shoe-in for the championship. We always have question marks about our team. Sometimes you all don't recognize them as clearly as what they might be, just like last year's team. Yeah, we had a great quarterback coming back. We had a great player in Will Anderson on defense. We had a lot of question marks on our team, but that gets overlooked because you have these two star players at critical positions. And, you know, this year, maybe we don't have those kind of impactful players at those critical positions. So it's very challenging to develop the team so that they can compete at a high level. We have some experience coming back on both sides of the ball, and we also have a lot of new young players who can contribute in a very positive way to our team. So, but every year is challenging. Every year is, and no matter what's happened in some other year, at some other time, in some other circumstance, it's not going to impact this year. The people on this team, the coaches on our staff, are going to do what they can to try to impact this year in a positive way in terms of what we want to accomplish and what we want to do.
Front row.
Good morning, Coach. AP Stedham, AP and Kelly, as we see at syndicated radio. Out of curiosity, do you recommend any place that you visited this summer? And then the second question is, I know you sought counsel in the past on different phases of the game. What's been your experience studying the two quarterback system?
Well, first of all, the first question is a better question. So, you know, everybody knows we went to Italy. It was for our 50th wedding anniversary, which was really in the past, but I kept getting out of going because I didn't really want to go and take 10 days to not be around. But it was a great trip, and I would recommend that anybody go. And Florence is fantastic, Rome is fantastic, the Amalfi Coast is fantastic, and we got roll-tided everywhere we went. So if you think you're going to be incognito over there, that's not happening. So, and the second part is, you know, we need for all of our quarterbacks to develop on our team. I don't think anybody separated themselves to this point, even though I see improvement in each and every guy in terms of how well they're doing and how they're developing. But we need that on our team. We don't just need a starter. We need a backup. We need, you know, good players at that position. Just like Jalen Milroe had the opportunity to play last year, we needed him to be ready in the Arkansas game and the A&M game. So when somebody separates themselves and nobody knows for sure when that is, and I can't establish a timetable to say on this date we're going to say this is the starting quarterback. It's going to happen when it happens, and that's the way it'll be.
Right side, fourth row. Good morning, Coach. Tony Reese, WTVM out of Columbus, Georgia. The long-term saying, Bama doesn't really lose, they reload. So with the addition of key players going into the draft, I know you guys kind of reload every year. Kind of what's been that going forward this year?
Well, I think that that's the way it's going to be. When you have a lot of good players and you do a good job of developing those players as they have at Georgia, we have done that some in the past. You lose 4 or 5 guys that are underclassmen, in some cases more, some cases maybe less. Instead of having 17 starters back, you got 12. So it impacts your team and makes your team younger. So the challenge is how can we develop the young players on our team quickly enough that they're ready to go out and create value for themselves and play winning football? That's the challenge. So and that's what we've had to do in many years. Some years we've done it better than others. And that's going to be the challenge for us this year.
Left side, second row.
Ryan Hennessy, WVTM, NBC 13 in Birmingham. Coach, you're over here. Your offensive coordinator is 30 years old. the age gap between you and him. What has it been like so far when you hired him, a 30-year-old offense coordinator? Do you have a lot of things in common? Maybe some differences, or what is that like? Because a lot of fans.
It's great. First of all, still feel like I'm 39, and Tommy's great. He's mature. He does a great job presenting to the players. He has good relationships with the players. He's very bright. He understands the game. He's a very good quarterback coach in terms of helping guys improve at that position, which I think is critical. We don't have any issues. He's very respectful of what we want to do and how we want to do it. And the guy's hungry, wants to learn. I think he's one of the brightest young coaches that I've been around for a long time.
Right side, second row.
Hey, Coach. So most players have a go-to song or artist that kind of get them locked into the game. I'm curious, what is on a Nick Saban pregame hype playlist for you?
I don't understand this question. Say that again.
What's like your go-to music choice? What are you listening to? What are you and Terry listening to?
Next question.
Well, you know, we don't. I don't really listen to music before the game. You know, we always play "Gimme Shelter" going home. You know, after the game. But I don't listen to music before the game. I'm kind of thinking about, you know, have we covered everything we need to cover? Players ready to go, and trying to anticipate what might be a problem in the game at some point. So, I mean, if you walk around in a locker room, you can get entertained quite a bit because most people are listening to music, which I think is a way the players are trying to relax, you know, a little bit and curb their anxiety. And I think that's a good thing, but I just never did that. So I can't answer that.
All right, there you go. You never know what you're going to get in one of the interview rooms here at SEC Media Day. So that was Nick Saban. After we come back from the break, our good friend Scott Powers from ExperienceSC.com is going to join us, and we're going to talk about some things happening sports-wise around the Midlands and the Columbia area. Then we'll hear from Wes Goodwin, Clemson defensive coordinator, and the recruiting report is coming up as well. Some significant stuff to tell you about in recruiting. So we'll have all that for you. And SC Wild at the bottom of the next hour. We'll be back.
By the way, before we do what's supposed to happen here, thank you for pushing the button. I thank you. Programming thanks you. America thanks you.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
Grills, outdoor kitchens, fireplaces, summer sizzle starts with Bart. This is 107 The Point.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. 2 IRS whistleblowers testify before the House Oversight Committee on the way the Hunter Biden investigation was handled by the Justice Department. IRS Supervisory Special Agent Gary Shapley says the Hunter Biden probe was handled differently than any other he's seen in his years on the job.
At every stage, decisions were made that benefited the subject of this investigation. For example, prosecutors concealed contents of Hunter Biden's laptop from investigators. DOJ slow-walked steps to include interviews, serving document requests, and executing search warrants. Warrants that were ready as early as April of 2020, but were delayed until after the November 2020 election and never pursued.
Democrats dismissed the hearings as conspiracy theories. Much of the nation is wrestling with bad weather. Correspondent Rita Foley reports.
In Kentucky, it's flooding from waves of thunderstorms. The National Weather Service estimated that there could be as much as 10 inches of rain in the area where Kentucky, Illinois, and Missouri meet at the convergence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. There are reports of rescue crews pulling people from high water surrounding homes and vehicles in the Mayfield and Wingo areas of Kentucky, says Keith Cooley. He's a forecaster with the Weather Service in Paducah, Kentucky. He calls this a life-threatening situation because so much rain fell in such a short time. I'm Rita Foley.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Chris Sununu, who considered but decided against runs for president in the U.S. Senate, now says he'll not seek re-election in 2024. The 48-year-old Sununu, who's been governor since 2017, said in an email Wednesday that he will not seek a fifth two-year term. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 109 points, the Nasdaq rose 4, the S&P advanced 10. More at townhall.com.
Relief Factor pain relief. It's natural pain relief that works, and pain relief that attacks the source of the pain. That's the experience of tens of thousands of Americans who are taking Relief Factor right now. See their incredible video endorsements at relieffactor.com, and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. Relieffactor.com. Relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
For nearly 100 years, folks have trusted Blue Star medicated ointment to relieve the pain and itching of almost any skin irritation.
It works on my son's dry itching feet and their jock itch.
I had this rash on my neck. Nothing worked until Blue Star.
Blue Star worked great on my ringworm without steroids.
My wife and I have been using Blue Star for years. It's never let us down.
Look for the white box with the Blue Star in the first aid section. Feel Blue Star work fast, or your money back.
Chinese live streamers have set their sights on TikTok sales to shoppers in the U.S. and Europe, despite uncertainties over the platform's future. Correspondent Karen Chang.
Streaming e-commerce is forecast to reach $676 billion by the year's end. But the highly competitive live streaming market in China has led some hosts to look to Western markets to carve out niches for themselves. Live streaming e-commerce has yet to take off in the US. However, according to research and advisory firm CallSite Research, the US market is expected to grow to $68 billion by 2026. But the opportunity is not without risks. TikTok could face US restrictions due to tensions between Beijing and Washington. I'm Karen Chamas.
News and analysis at townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
And here's tonight's forecast. Muggy this evening with a low temp dip into 74. Tomorrow, increased humidity and a feels like temp of 101 to go with an actual high of 93. There's a 30% chance we get some afternoon downpours. Friday is the week's hottest day with a high of 96. And rain chances increasing to 40% in the afternoon. Brian Leonard with your On Point local weather.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
Grills, outdoor kitchens, fireplaces. Summer sizzle starts with Bart. This is 107 The Point. Please press button now. I said to, genius.
Welcome back to Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network. You can reach the guys with the South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number, 888-898-2525. That's 888-898-2525. Now back to Phil, Chris, and Pat with the second hour of Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Talk Media Network from SEC Media Days in Nashville. Phil Kornblut here, Chris Bergen at the Berge Palace in Sardis, Pat Daniel at the studios in Columbia. Couple of quick notes, and then Scott Powers is going to join us for a couple of minutes. The folks from Bet Online have given us the odds for winning the SEC East and West for this coming season. Georgia listed at 2-15. Tennessee's 5-1. Florida and the Gamecocks are 33-1. Kentucky 40-1. Missouri 50-1. Vandy 300-1. In the West, Alabama is even money, 1-1. LSU 7-4. A&M 5-1. Ole Miss 20-1. Yeah. Auburn 25-1. Arkansas 45-1, and Mississippi State 66-1. I tell you what, with the quarterback they've got and receivers coming back and a good coach, people are selling Mississippi State, I think, a good bit short. We also have the Sun Belt odds, and Coastal Carolina is a 3-2 favorite to win the East. Appalachian State is 5-2 in the West. South Alabama is a 3-2 favorite, and Troy is an 8-5 pick there. Also wanted to mention Yeah, this came out earlier in the week. I also wanted to mention this, that from South Carolina, that 8 former USC standouts will be inducted into their Hall of Fame, their athletic Hall of Fame. They call it their Letterman's Hall of Fame. And these are Allison Brennan, swimming and diving; Ernest Dye, football; Eric Ecker from men's golf; Sean Gortman, women's basketball; Wally Jones from baseball; Chris Mayotte from men's tennis; Kim Petro from softball; and Demetria Washington from women's track and field. They'll do this on Thursday, October the 12th, and they'll be recognized during the Florida football game that weekend. And you know, with fall coming up and Gamecock football coming up and all the other USC sports coming up, it's going to be a very busy time around the capital city. Nobody has a better feel for that than Scott Powers from ExperienceColumbiaSCSports.com. And Scott joins us here on Sports Talk. Once again, great to have you with us. I'm in Nashville. I'm sure you've been to Nashville and seen the cranes everywhere in the downtown part of Nashville. They're building like crazy. They got so much going on. As a guy with big plans and big ideas, I know you'd love to see that around Columbia as well.
Yes. Nashville's not the place that I remember going to back in college. But I'm sure it's still better than Hoover, Phil. So have a good time. Sorry.
No question about that. No question about that. Yeah. But with the fall coming up and all the stuff happening with USC athletics, and how are you guys preparing for that? What sort of things do you have in mind that'll be going on along the same lines as what they'll have going on at USC?
Yeah, we're trying to work with the people that are coming into town for Gamecock football games, the visiting fans. So we've been doing some outreach with all the visiting teams that are coming in to make sure they have a good idea what hotels are available, where the restaurants are, how to get around town, those type things. So it's basically outreach that a lot of people locally won't see because we're actually trying to reach the people before they travel here come fall.
And what does that generally mean, a football season in Columbia, economically, the number of people who come in both to support the Gamecocks and the visitors coming to town? What typically does that mean for Columbia for a weekend?
God, it's, I think everybody remembers when we hosted March Madness. A big home football game in Columbia means about as much in economic impact as March Madness did. So it's a huge event that happens, 7 times a year. So it's not replaceable. That's not something that we could make up. And I think everybody remembers back to the pandemic when we weren't able to attend those games and the hit that a lot of local businesses in the Columbia area took because of it. So excited about Coach Beamer and what he's got going on with his staff. And the excitement is still there. And we continue to see that grow. But we stay excited. It's always exciting in July.
Sure. Talking season, everybody's undefeated. So when I look at the teams that are coming into Columbia, Mississippi State will bring some. I don't know how much, but Florida will bring a big crowd. Vandy won't. Kentucky will, and Clemson will. The Clemson game, when the Clemson game is in Columbia, how big is that? I mean, even though you got a lot of Clemson folks, and I guess it's depending on what time the game's going to be played for a lot of people, maybe it's just a day trip, but even a day trip, you get a ton of people coming into Columbia, and maybe even earlier than normal since it's the big rivalry game. Or does the Thanksgiving holiday impact that in some way?
I think Thanksgiving affects it a little bit. We're trying to see how that, I think this year will be a good idea of how that bounced back. Right before the pandemic, there were 25,000 people that didn't have a ticket that came to tailgate and have a good time outside the stadium. So we hope to see those crowds come back around people that just want to be a part of the atmosphere, whether they have a ticket for the game or not.
So, besides the Gamecock athletic events coming up, primarily football, what else do you have your eye on coming up this fall?
Wow, it really kicks off. Our year began July 1st, but it really kicks off tonight. We're over in Lexington County at the Blowfish. They're hosting the Coastal Plain League All-Star game tonight. So that kicks off our summer. American Pickleball will be at the Convention Center July 29th and 30th. We're excited about that. The last day to register for all the folks to come out and play pickleball is July 25th. That's the first time event that we've hosted inside the Convention Center. So we're excited to see how that goes. Pickleball is still the fastest growing sport in America. Then our golf season kicks off. Matthew Neesmith, that played golf at Carolina, is once again hosting his golf tournament, the American Junior Golf Association event, July 31st through the August 3rd. That's at Forest Lake. Those young people are the future of golf. If anybody has any doubts about the future of professional golf 15, 20 years from now, go out and watch those youngsters hit the ball around a pretty stout course at Forest Lake. And then the South Carolina Women's Open will be at Cobblestone Park August 10th through the 13th. So we got a lot of stuff that we try to get done before football season gets here, so everything can have their own promotion, have everybody being able to pay attention to their events. So excited about putting all those together.
Pickleball. It's amazing what that sport is doing. 3 or 4 years ago, I was in Atlanta at a gym and just shooting some basketball, and I saw these people maybe 65, 70, 75, much older than us, and they needed somebody to fill out a pickleball team, and I'd never heard of pickleball. They said, yeah, come here, we'll tell you how to play and show you how to do it, and, don't step in the kitchen and don't let the ball bounce or whatever you call that thing. Itself a dumb game. I mean, really, this should be at a senior home somewhere with shuffleboard. And now it's like taking over the world, right? It's taking over the world.
Yes. Pro athletes are investing in it. They're building. They just built down in Florida. They just built a 50-court covered facility down there at Daytona area. So it is. It's not just young people, teenagers, college students, all kinds of people. I thought the same thing you did a couple of years ago. That it'd be great because it would be some of the senior people coming into town. It'd be a different way for us to get a different demographic into town. But we're fully expecting people from 8 to 80 to come out in a couple of weekends at the convention center.
That's fantastic. Well, best of luck. Tell everybody where to go to see what you guys are doing and how they can get all the information on the events you guys are going to be involved with here coming up.
Yep, all those events I mentioned are listed on our calendar of events. They can be found at ColumbiaSCSports.com, and calendar of events and everything that we've got going on throughout the year will be on there as well.
Well, you have a great fall. I'm sure we'll see you around, talk to you again. And as always, thank you for joining us here on Sports Talk. It's a great pleasure.
Appreciate it, Scott.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Scott Powers doing a great job helping to promote a lot of different types of sporting events around the Midlands area of South Carolina. We appreciate Scott being on with us tonight. We go to recruiting now here on Sports Talk, and recruiting is brought to you by Seawells. And we've got Thursday, Friday coming up, so you got a couple of days left to get over to Seawells for the daily luncheon buffet. It's only $13. It is served from 11 till 2. Nashville's a great town. It's a great town with great food. It doesn't have a Seawells daily buffet, and that's a minus. So that's one thing that Columbia has over Nashville is the Seawells daily luncheon buffet. And, of course, the very best in the catering business, none other than Sewell family and staff for that. 803-771-7385 online at SewellsCateringSC.com. USC target wide receiver Jonathan Paylor, Burlington, North Carolina. I think we told you this last night. Tweeted out yesterday that he'll disclose at 2 o'clock August the 5th. He's had USC and NC State, his top two, and I bring this up because he'd been favoring South Carolina in our conversations. However, the Wolfpack have made inroads last couple of weeks. On top of that, he told the NC State website, Pack Pride, he's going to visit NC State July 28th and North Carolina the next day. No plans to visit USC again. Does that work in NC State's favor? The other thing I would tell you is he's not talking too much, it appears, to local media. He is talking more to NC State type media. That's, to me, that's an indication of what a kid is thinking at this stage when they're getting down to decision time. Who is he talking to? The national services have all projected him to the Gamecocks. Of course, I would say one flaw in their system is that they can change their decisions. They can change their predictions at any time based on what they learn. I don't know if that's a fair. I mean, if you're going to make a prediction, you should have to stick with it, right?
I agree.
You shouldn't be able to change your prediction 3 days before the announcement because you found out, well, my prediction's wrong. I got to change it. I mean, what good's having a prediction? That kind of defeats the whole purpose.
You're going to be perfect every time if you change it, 5 minutes before he commits.
I think that's kind of a joke. More bad news, maybe for the Gamecocks. A website, Alabama website, Bama on 3, a story on running back Daniel Hill. He said he's going to be at Alabama on the 29th, and he's not going to go back to South Carolina for their cookout. They also cited his father as wanting him at Alabama. His father played at Mississippi State. Hill announces on August 23rd. So Tennessee and Southern Cal remain in there on the fringe. Again, all three networks are predicting Hill to South Carolina. So we'll see how good their prediction talent is with these two. Clemson last night offered offensive tackle Elijah Thurman, 6'5", 275 of Hinesville, Georgia. He also has a USC offer. He camped at both places in June. Of course, the Tigers have come up short on several linemen they've gone after. They started showing interest in Thurman after his camp performance, but did not offer until others ahead of him on their board made decisions. Thurman also has offers from Florida, Duke, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, Missouri, and others. Safety Jalen Hayward, who just decommitted from Georgia, he mentioned Clemson in a story as one of his new schools of interest. Basketball, Julian Iturbe of Riverside was offered by Bradley. Now to the Transfer Portal John Report. The Transfer Portal John Report brought to you by Dumpster Plus. Dumpster Plus provides a roll-off dumpster and a Porta John in one, operated right out of Columbia. Give them a call, 803-500-5094, 803-500-5094. Mentioned earlier, linebacker T.J. Dudley of Clemson's in the Transfer Portal John. However, he apparently has no choice because David Hood of TigerNet reported he was dismissed from the team for a rules violation. So what you going to do? You get kicked off the team? Where you going to go? Portal John. Miami cornerback Chris Graves is in the Portal John, according to Matt Zenitz. Former Texas A&M offensive lineman Chris Morris has gone back to the Portal John. He had signed with Memphis in December after spending last season at Hutchinson Junior College. Wide receiver. Oh, and we have to make a correction. We made a mistake last night. I think I started it and you agreed. Yeah, I misread this. So this wide receiver who's in his 8th year, Bradley Rosner, who's transferring from Rice to NC State, he actually did play. I made the comment, said, it looks like he didn't play any. No, he did play. Like, he caught 44 passes last year at Rice. Apparently, he's a good player.
Still irrelevant. Yeah, but it's irrelevant. He should not be still playing college sports.
I just want to make it clear that I misstated that he did not play. I don't want to be like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I'm going to admit all my faults. Okay?
You're afraid of NC State now? Guy in his 8th year should be a professional somewhere outside of college, is my point. Or a lawyer.
I'd like to be correct, even if it's the second time around. If I'm not correct the first time, I want to be correct the second time. So I apologize for that. He did play. He did play some and had a good season last year at Rice. All right, that's it for recruiting. here
we
on
do
Sports
have
Talk.
more.
Let's hit the break.
Hold on, Phil. We have a breaking major recruiting story we need to mention.
Yeah,
We had a live announcement. Mike Matthews, and hate to say it to our Clemson fans out there, he chose Tennessee. So that is another loss for the Clemson program against Tennessee. Another recruiting battle there. He announced his decision at 7. He chose Tennessee over Georgia, Clemson, Southern Cal, among others. Matthews is a 6'1", 180-pound receiver from Parkview High in Lilburn, Georgia. So we want to make sure we get out there. And also, you mentioned Chris Graves in the portal. Just worth mentioning, he officially tweeted out himself that he's in the portal. And remember, he chose Miami over LSU and South Carolina. Torian Gray heavily recruited him for the Gamecocks. Just throwing that out there.
Very good. Let's go to the break. We'll come back and hear a few words from Clemson defensive coordinator Wes Goodwin here on Sports Talk. And then Major Billy Downer joins us. It's an SC Wild night here on Sports Talk. Plenty to talk about here in the dog days of summer. But right around the corner, you know what's coming up, deer hunting season. So I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about those topics and others. And we'll be back after this break on Sports Talk. Don't go away.
Major Downer here from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. Boating season is just around the corner. To make sure that your boat is ready, check your registration sticker and ensure it's current. Find your registration card, make sure your life jackets are in good shape, and check your fire extinguisher as well. For more information on boating or boat titling questions, visit dnr.sc.gov/boating.
Hi, I'm Jim Corbett. I've been an attorney for more than 30 years. There's one thing I've learned about injury cases. It's you need the personal touch. You need the lawyer to get to know you and describe your damages. You don't want a case manager talking to an insurance company and then talking to you and then talking maybe to a lawyer with limited experience at the last minute to try to settle a case. I talk to you. I find out what your case is about. Jim at JimCorbettAttorney.com. Jim at JimCorbettAttorney.com for your injury cases.
Hi, folks. This is Mike Morgan. I want to tell you about an exciting new product from my friends at Vision Air Solutions. Staying healthy in my line of work is so critical, and probably in yours as well. A large factor in all that is making sure we're breathing in healthy and safe air every day. That's where Vision Air Solutions comes in. They make sure your home has air purification for all the air pollution you can't see. Viruses, mold, bacteria, stale odors, cooking smells, and volatile organic compounds. They make sure your home is full of clean air and also offer HVAC duct cleaning and sanitation as well. Make sure you and your family are breathing clean air today by giving Vision Air Solutions a call today. 803-220-1811. That's 803-220-1811. Tell them Mike sent you.
Life, it has its ups and downs. Sometimes it's little things like hitting every red light or dropping your cell phone. Maybe it's the bills, rent, or pressure at work. But when it comes to the South Carolina Education Lottery, you should never feel like playing will solve everything. The lottery is a game. It's played for fun. So set a dollar amount. Expect not to win and make sure responsibilities, family, friends, and work come first. Visit PlayResponsiblySC.com.
Hi, this is Major Billy Downer, and coming up tonight at 7:30, it's another edition of SC Wow from the Department of Natural Resources on the Sports Talk Media Network.
Summer weather has arrived in South Carolina, and you know what that means. Sweet, tasty South Carolina peaches are hitting shelves near you. Most people tend to think of Georgia as the peach state, but South Carolina is the East Coast's top producing peach state, so we know a thing or two about a great tasting peach. The next time you're in the grocery store or local farmer's market, keep an eye out for those sweet, tasty, certified SC peaches. Discover more about the tastier peach state at scpeach.org.
Well, I've messed everybody up here. We're going to go to Wes Goodwin, but now I'm looking and we got 4 minutes. That's not enough time to do that fair. And then we told callers not to hang on because we weren't going to get the calls. We could have gotten to a couple of calls. If you want to call back real quick, we'll get you back on the air real quick. So that's on me. I've totally messed this up.
Don't second guess yourself.
Well, I feel bad when I do stuff like
Bruce
that.
And Hank, come on back.
I wanted to say, Mike Matthews. Clemson. In following this, I never talked to the kids. So Clemson, the people Clemson recruits, generally are impossible to get on the phone because I guess it's because what happens is the highest level players, in my view, they get locked into the national websites that report on them and pick them through their all-star games and have them in their camps. And they don't really need to talk to the local reporter. They just pretty much do it all through the networks or their affiliates with the networks. The websites are affiliated with the networks. Independent people like myself can't get them. So I never talked to this kid. So I had no idea, no feel. But Clemson appeared to be in great shape with him throughout much of this, and then they weren't. And I know Clemson at first, they recruited him as a safety. Then he made it be known he wanted to be a receiver. So they, of course, switched to recruiting him as a receiver, as the other schools did. Everybody recruited him as a receiver. And he picks Tennessee. And if you're a Clemson fan, these are, and I've said this repeatedly, I know Clemson's having a good recruiting class. I'm not blowing it up, but they're just missing on too many players they used to nail, and I don't know what the answer to it is. Are they just being out-recruited and outworked? Do they have some coaches who can't carry their weight in recruiting? Is Clemson's NIL program not what the others are showing? They have NIL. They're doing it. They present it a different way. Is it not as good as what other schools? Is Clemson making a mistake by passing on in-state talent because they're Clemson and they think they can just recruit nationally and rely on that? I mean, look, South Carolina wiped their nose in-state this year on quality players. And then Clemson made no play for the Staley kid who's going where? Oh, yeah, Tennessee. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to make something up here just for the sake of hearing myself talk. I really think just looking at it, and maybe Clemson will prove me wrong, and all these players coming in are going to be great players. They're going to keep winning championships and all that. But I don't know. I'm seeing them missing on more players than I normally see them miss on.
It's interesting.
No comment.
I don't see because I don't follow recruiting closely enough to make a cohesive argument against you or for what you're saying. So I defer to you often when it comes to recruiting.
Well, that's probably a wise move on your part. Wouldn't waste your time on it. Thank you. We're going to hit the break. SC Wild is coming up on the other side. We'll be right back.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
And here's tonight's forecast. Muggy this evening with a low temp dipping to 74. Tomorrow, increased humidity and a feels like temp of 101 to go with an actual high of 93. There's a 30% chance we get some afternoon downpours. Friday is the week's hottest day with a high of 96. And rain chances increasing to 40% in the afternoon. Brian Leonard with your On Point local weather.
Hey, this is Paul Romanstein, proud owner of Midlands Landscape and Lawns. Is it time for a new lawn? You need to start with a smooth grade done right. Then a must is a new Rainbird irrigation system that comes complete with a 1-year warranty. We will then help you know what turf is right for your yard. Tiff Tough Bermuda is a great turf for full sun. Then let the pros maintain your whole property and keep your new grass green and healthy and weed-free. At Midlands Landscape and Lawns, we hate weeds. So that's why you can find us at hateweeds.com. hateweeds.com.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters reporting a tornado has heavily damaged a large Pfizer pharmaceutical plant in North Carolina, the latest in a string of extreme weather events to plague the U.S. Floods also deluged communities in Kentucky, and scorching heat smothered Phoenix and Miami yet again Wednesday. The pharmaceutical company Pfizer said in an email that it had no reports of serious injuries and that all plant employees were safely evacuated before the tornado damaged its plant near Rocky Mount. Elsewhere, Phoenix broke an all-time record Wednesday morning with a warm low temperature at 97 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, Kentucky is bracing for more rain after flash floods prompted recent rescues from rain-swamped homes and vehicles. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 109 points, the Nasdaq rose 4, the S&P advanced 10. More details at srnnews.com.
Let's be real. There's more than one kind of customer when it comes to Shooter's Choice. First, there's the customer who knows what's what, has a pretty good idea of what he or she likes. You're looking for a few things. First, a good selection. Yep, Shooter's Choice has a huge selection. Firearms, ammo, accessories, optics, even gun safes. You're looking for good and fair pricing. Oh yeah, Shooters has been around as your local stop forever because they treat you right. And how about customer service? Absolutely the best you'll find anywhere. The folks who work at Shooter's Choice are shooters and hunters just like you. They know their products, they can answer your question. And that brings me to the other type of customer. Someone maybe more like me. No expert for sure, but wants to learn from the right people. I don't need some big box store guy who works in the shoe department half a week, sporting goods the other half. I need the experts at Shooter's Choice who will treat me right, answer my questions as simple as they might be. They'll make my experience excellent. Online, it's shooterschoicesc.com or visit them in person on Sunset Boulevard in West Columbia. Make it your first choice, your best choice. Make it Shooter's Choice.
Dave Ramsey here. Do you want your money to work for you rather than you working for your money? Go see my friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. They're not a mega bank and have been serving the Midlands since 1936, offering good old-fashioned customer service and free services. They'll look out for your financial well-being. With 14 locations, check them out today at palmettocitizens.org. Federally insured by the NCUA.
Are you getting a tax refund? You've been waiting to put those new hardwood floors in? Or is it that luxury vinyl plank that's so hot right now? It's time to call the flooring department. Stretch your dollars here. The flooring department doesn't have a huge multi-million-dollar showroom to pay for. They keep your prices down and your quality up. Look, we all buy from the same manufacturers, so why pay more? Online at theflooringdepartment.com or call 951-3567. That's 951-FLOR.
Hey, honey, I know you're taking some meds for cholesterol. I was reading that if you're on these medicines, you should also be taking some CoQ10.
Actually, our pharmacist mentioned that to me already. He called me the other day, and we went through each of our medications together.
Really? He called you?
Yeah, he asked if I was having any side effects, recommended supplements that could help me, and let me know the risk of mixing certain drugs.
Wow. I'm happy to know that True Pharmacy is thinking about us.
True Pharmacy, 1628 Charleston Highway, 3217 Divine Street, or visit truerxsc.com.
Hey, Tiger fans, it's your head coach of Clemson Gymnastics, Amy Smith, here to tell you that season tickets for our first ever season are on sale now, starting at just $25. Make sure to visit ClemsonTigers.com to secure your seat in Little John Coliseum. We cannot wait to compete this coming January, and believe me, you won't want to miss this. Visit ClemsonTigers.com today and go Tigers.
Now on Sports Talk, it's SC Wild with Major Billy Downer of the Department of Natural Resources. Major Downer is here to take your questions about the great outdoors in South Carolina. Give him a call at 888-898-2525. It's SC Wild from DNR on the Sports Talk Radio Network.
We take a break from football talk here at SEC Media Days in Nashville to talk about the great outdoors in the state of South Carolina on this hot July evening. We welcome in once again Major Billy Downer from the Department of Natural Resources. So much going on the waters and in the fields and in the rivers and the oceans and everywhere else. Major, hope you're having a great week. It's great to have you with us. And take it away. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, it's going to be your favorite show tonight, Phil. This might be your top 5 of all time. It's going to involve one of your 2 favorite things to talk about. And I've even got a new guest on the show tonight who is not only a announced expert, but she really is an expert on this particular topic for tonight. And we'll be talking about the Gators, but not the Florida Gators tonight. It'll be the alligator here in South Carolina.
Oh, my
Back
goodness.
At the top of the news, lots of interest in the alligator right now. I want to kind of talk about just what we're doing to, get out in front of things with alligators in our environment, as we always do on this show. Phil, we'll talk about the do's and don'ts of alligator, but I want to introduce Morgan to our show tonight. She is the alligator coordinator for the Department of Natural Resources. Morgan Hart, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey guys, am I live? Hey,
yep,
how's
live.
it going? Hi,
Morgan, I appreciate you coming on. We talked about this about a week ago, but Phil Kornblut, you don't know, you may know, he's infamous. He is one of the biggest protagonists about alligators probably in the state with me. If we don't talk about alligators, we talk about sharks on this show. So tonight, we're going to try to keep it to the alligator and not go to Jaws. Can you do that, Phil?
I'm right with you, Major. Whatever you want to do, I'm right there with you.
Well, you know, it's funny. We've talked about alligators so much on the show before. We tend to almost, in the summertime, it seems like we always talk about them. We're getting close to the alligator season coming up also, which is one of the ways that we control our population and allow folks to put in for a tag system. And Morgan, I'm going to be quiet at some point. Phil probably can't believe that, but I'll be quiet at some point and let you talk. But one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight with folks is because there's been a lot of interest lately with alligators and alligator bites. You know, Phil, we talked about that 5 years ago. I could say we never had an alligator fatality in this state or a fatality involving an alligator, and that's just not the case now. And it's not that alligators are the bad guy. It's just that we, as a population, continue to move into the areas where they live. Their population is doing well, of course, but we as people in this great state just sometimes don't watch the signs and aren't smart with what we do sometimes when we walk around water in areas where alligators frequent. So some of the things we'll talk about tonight is just some of the things that we'd like to remind folks, dogs and things like that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But we did have, unfortunately, a couple bites in the last week or two here at July 4th, and one was fatal. Two were not, but we want to talk about it tonight. Morgan, how long have you been over our alligator program, so to speak?
Yeah, so I've been working for DNR in general for about 6 years, and I've been over the alligator program for 4.5 of those. I'm the project leader and work with all the different programs that we run for, whether it's alligator removal or alligator permitting for captive alligators and education. So.
Well, cool. So let me start with this, Morgan. If there's a message that you would want to put you on the spot for a minute, that you would want to start off with about alligators, what would you want to say to the folks that may not understand alligators or think they know alligators? But just what would you say from your standpoint with what you've been doing about alligator awareness?
Yeah, absolutely. Alligators learn very quickly, and so you can teach them to approach people. And the way you do that is, you feed them, or you gut fish near the water. You don't fish guts in the water. You reel fish in quickly and get the alligator chasing the line. Some of that stuff is intentional, and some of it is not. Some of it is people who just have been in the water, around the water, fishing their whole lives and don't think about those alligators. And once you teach those alligators to approach people for food, that's when we have these situations that become very dangerous. Normal alligator behavior is to be scared of people, to move away from people. And so when you get these alligators that are intentionally approaching people, those are alligators that have been fed or are, have been habituated to people through these actions that, are causes bad behavior.
Well, and again, it's not against the law to clean your fish, but it is against the law to feed alligators. And if you're cleaning your fish at the water's edge on a dock and the guts are dumping in the water, while at that time you may not think you're littering, you're not doing anything wrong, you are creating an environment that is attractive to alligators because it's free food. And they've got a very small brain. They got a very small brain. Phil, we've talked about it, laughed about it, a little walnut-sized brain, and it doesn't tells them two things: eat and procreate. And I don't want that alligator looking at me. I've said that every time I laugh about it. I don't want an alligator looking at me having to side because he doesn't have a whole lot of brain power. And
I would add to that.
Go ahead.
Major, I would add to that that they do have a very small brain, and the way they learn, because of that small brain, but they've survived all these years, and they are really good at surviving, and so they learn fast, and once it's learned, it's almost impossible to unlearn it because their brain is so small. So, you like you said, you're gutting fish into the water, and even if you don't think you're not intentionally feeding an alligator, you may be feeding an alligator. And we get these situations where these fishing boats, even whether it's commercial or recreational, fishing boats will come into a landing or a dock and dump their fish scraps or whatever else in the water, in their mind innocently, and then
sure.
There'll be 6 or 7 alligators just constantly hang out at that landing because that's where they get food, and that's where you get this concentration of alligators that are not scared of people, and people that don't know alligators are there, or maybe they're tourists or whatever, and they're getting in the water, they're walking in the water, they're putting their hands in the water, and you can get really, really serious situations.
And let's kind of connect the dots on that for a minute, Morgan. In case in point, when you have, and even I remember 20, 30 years ago, people going to some of our state parks and throwing bread out in the water for alligators. I mean, they just don't think they're feeding alligators, whatever. Not that bread's their diet, but everything splashing in the water. It's just natural. But when you have an alligator that's used to seeing fish hit the water, they saw this person, this two-legged thing walk up, all of a sudden there's food in the water, they're going, like you said, I just learned something. That person shows up, there's probably going to be some food in the water.
Yep.
Later
absolutely.
on, another person shows up, and they don't have any food, they don't know anything about what's been going on, the alligator still thinks, hey, they're supposed to have food, and that has created situations where alligators come up out of the water looking for that handout. Would you agree with that, Morgan? Is that a good description of how these things happen?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've seen several, 2 or 3 videos recently that have been shared online and of alligators. There was one on Hilton Head that chased the guy that had been fishing, and there's another one that was shared around. I don't know what location that was actually from, but shared around of an alligator coming up out of the water and, following somebody for a good 10 feet up out of the water as he's moving away from the bank. I don't know that I would call it chasing, but some people might call it chasing. But these are situations. This is not natural or normal alligator chase. This is clearly animals that have been fed by people. They're reeling their fish in. The fish is splashing. The alligator goes, "Hey, there's the food that I was promised last time somebody was fishing here, and let me go run after it, whether there's a person there or not."
Right, because I'm waiting for that food that's coming.
That's right.
And that's really how simple this stuff happens. And Morgan, you and I were talking about this, and I know I've been in other conversations in the last week, Jay Butlowski, others, just talking about how we're trying to adjust our messaging now to really get to the point with people that, and I've always said this, Phil, you've heard me talk about, and I give this credit a long time ago to a guy who used to do animal programs for DNR, and Jim Edwards, and he said he used to tell kids, he said, dogs taste like chicken. Alligators see the dog, they're coming after it. That's just their thing. So, that sounds horrible, but it's animal instinct, and it's what the alligator looks at a dog differently than it looks at a human. When he sees a dog, he's looking at opportunity, and
absolutely,
people don't understand that.
Right.
They have their leash, the dog's at the edge of the water. Oh, let's let that dog play in the water, splash. Let's let it get in the water, splash around. I've had a friend of mine who was a dog trainer, and we used to tell people, 4 or 5 foot alligators are a problem. They're not going to hurt anything. Well, that's not necessarily true. When you put a dog in the water or a lab going after a dummy, first of all, the throwing dummy looks like something tried to a small gator. And then the head of the dog in the water, if you think about it, the dog may be 60 pounds or 70 pounds, but his head is very small. And when it's going across the water, that's attracted to the alligator that's looking eye level in that water. And it creates a situation where your dog could get hurt. Yeah, that 5 foot alligator may not kill him, but it sure could hurt your dog, and nobody wants that. And you just got to be alligator aware.
Absolutely. And in the water, even a 5 foot alligator, on land, a 5 foot alligator could, maybe break your hand or break your ankle. But a 5 foot alligator in the water, all he has to do is hold on and go down, and then most alligator fatalities and or dog injuries, dog where dogs are killed, is they die from drowning. They don't, it's not like a shark where you're going to get bleed to death. It's from drowning. So they go down and they hold you underwater, and that's how these fatalities happen. So again, if you're on dry land, yeah, that's right. And if you're on dry land, that can't happen. Yep.
They're one big muscle, and it's designed for swimming. Their body's designed perfectly for it. On land, they're limited to those four legs. And let me say this, Phil, because people always want to say, if an gator comes after you, you should run in a zigzag pattern. That has nothing to do with it. You just need to get away from the area where alligators are. If an alligator's coming after you, it's already too late because you've gotten too close.
Does zigzagging help you at all if you're trying to run away? Or?
It may make you feel better, but it may make it no. It doesn't.
I would add the important thing is just to get away without falling down, right? So even if that means you're backing up, medium speed, you don't have to necessarily run. You just need to get away from the alligator, and you don't have to think about which direction, zigzagging or any of that stuff. You just need to get away without falling down. Don't overcomplicate it.
Right. The zigzag doesn't necessarily do anything but make you have to think more, and you may trip. Like you say,
that's right.
Run away. But I go back to the be alligator aware and stay away from that situation where alligators could come out at you. Go ahead, Phil. You're dying.
I just want to, since we're on the subject here, I wanted to ask Morgan, and it's great having you with us, and we got to have you back because this is fascinating stuff to me, of course, because Major knows that I have a phobia about alligators for some reason. I think it's from talking to him over all these years. I've created this phobia.
Well, you should talk to me, and I'll hopefully cure you of that phobia. So,
well, what has been your experience in dealing hands-on with gators? I mean, have you actually, put hands on and dealt with them in a close-up situation?
Oh yeah. We do multiple different levels of research on alligators, and so that includes things like capturing large adult male alligators and attaching GPS tags to them, and then tracking them over the course of a couple of years. We do mark recapture, so we go out on a couple of the WMAs and we capture these alligators, measure them, take some measurements of their not only their size but how healthy they are. Sometimes we take blood, we mark them, and then we release them, and then you can get information long term about where they're going, if you see them again, if they've grown, things like that. So I would say I've captured and had hands on 200 to 300 alligators. I've only had to kill a few, but most of the alligators I captured, we pull in, we tie them up, close their mouth, and do what we need to do, and then let them go safe and sound. So.
And how did you off them when you had to off them?
I use a knife.
A knife? You do it with a knife?
Yeah, behind. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Phil, let me explain something. I've said this before. It's worth saying now before we get to the gory details. This is not gator hunting and all that like you see in Louisiana. We're not out there running around shooting gators off the water. That's not what we do, because if you're shooting with a rifle, you miss, that bullet skips, you got a bigger problem because you might hit somebody else with some unintended target. Our alligator season, for instance, we go back through that. Gators have to be taken by hook and line, and pulled to the boat. Now, or with a bow and arrow, with a fishing line attached to the arrow. You have to have the gator in your possession, which means up to the boat, in control, and then you can dispatch the gator with a handgun or a bang stick, or if you wish, a knife behind the head, just like you said. But it has to be controlled, not uncontrolled. So that's one thing. Now, there are situations where we have control agents come in, and I want to hit on that more before we get off, because that's just to talk about the process so people understand that. But control agents sometimes will use a firearm to take a gator from a distance. But they have been doing this. We consider them professionals, and they take safety as the first regard. But Morgan,
and they also have to get special permission from us every time they need to do that. So
Absolutely, that's correct. And I've been doing this for 25 years in the field. That was my job. I said that last about it. My first couple of years as a game warden, I was the alligator boy. Every time there was an alligator call, I had to go. So, and I was on Lake Marion, so there's a lot of them. So I know a lot about the alligator guys, our control agents. But anyway, Morgan, let's talk. Gators are a natural part of the environment. They've been here for a long time, as you so aptly put. They've been here a long time, and longer on the lakes than we've been on the lakes. And when they become a problem is when they start showing up, and sometimes there's reasons for that. We've talked about fish dumping off the dock, things like that. You get a large gator hanging off the end of your dock, or your kids are swimming in by the lake, and this 12-foot alligator sitting there. She splashes and comes up. He investigates. But now we're scared because it's a 12-foot alligator. What do we do?
Well, there's lots of different situations that could come up, but if we're talking about we're talking about public waterways on a lake where either you live there or you're visiting. If you're looking at an alligator and you think that alligator's behavior is unacceptable or strange, or it's not just sitting over on the bank on the other side, or it's not just happened to be swimming by, you can call us. We have regional nuisance coordinator numbers all over the state, and those can be found on our website. You can also call the Operation Game Thief line. Our dispatchers are trained in how to respond to these nuisance alligator calls, and if it's something that's an emergency, they have the ability to dispatch an agent to come deal with that alligator. If it's more of something where we want to kind of investigate over time, then it'll go to a coordinator, and we'll follow up with you, call you back, and figure out what's going on. But we get about 2,000 to 3,000 nuisance complaints a year. A good portion of those are just people who don't know anything about alligators, and they're calling because they saw an alligator. Or they have seen alligators before, but they didn't realize how big they were, all kinds of things like that. If, however, you see an alligator or you have an alligator on your private property that's become a problem, you can also call, and in those cases, unless it's a serious emergency where someone needs to respond immediately, we can actually issue nuisance tags to you so that you can hire a removal company to come remove that alligator if it is actually a nuisance alligator.
Guys, real quick, if I may, sorry to jump in, Major. So in the past here, we have a gator hunting season coming up soon. Correct me if I'm wrong here. September 9th through October 14th. There was the lottery, though, where you were to apply for those permits, which was June 1st through July 15th. So that's now in our rearview mirror. Do you guys foresee any increase in either number of tags issued or maybe a longer duration of alligator hunting season moving forward? Or do you think at this point it's going to stay the way it is?
Morgan, let's take that.
Yeah, that's fine. So at this point, it's certainly not off the table. We did increase the number of tags last year in a temporary fashion after we had the 2 fatalities last year. There's certainly the option. We may reach that point going forward. My guess would be we'd be more likely to issue more tags than to open the season longer. But again, that's going to depend a lot on the harvest numbers we're seeing, because just because we're issuing more tags doesn't mean people are going to be able to take more alligators. I mean, there's only so many alligators in these public waterways. Also, the public season, a lot of these public waterways where public hunting is allowed, those aren't necessarily the alligators that are causing these nuisance problems. A lot of times the gators that are causing these problems are in small communities, HOAs, golf courses, places like that. So really the nuisance program is the more useful solution to that, where we're issuing tags to these small communities, and they're able to sort of manage the population of the alligators that are on these properties. And also at the same time, they're educating their residents, and they are putting up signage that we can supply them for free, to try to address this in a holistic fashion rather than just a let's remove more gators fashion. Because we do think that the alligator population is stable, but it is not, significantly increasing. The interaction increase that we're getting between people and alligators is because of the number of people is increasing, not the number of alligators. So, we don't want to run into a situation where, we're just removing all of the alligators because we've got so many people that people are, running into them all the time.
And Morgan, I have done this. You don't know this, but I have reminded constantly that alligators are a natural part of the ecosystem. They have a place in it. Small alligators eat turtles and snakes. That's the main say of their diet, which is good for ponds and things to get snakes. And people don't want turtles; they want alligators eating them. When does that start to change in their size, their food, as far as what they eat?
Well, so yeah, alligator size, as it increases, certainly the maximum or the largest prey they can take changes and increases. But that doesn't mean that they only hunt that large prey. They're still eating the small prey too. In fact, there was a study out of Florida where they worked with National Geographic, and they put cameras on the alligator heads and released them and looked at their feeding patterns over the course of a couple of weeks. And even very large alligators were eating small fish, frogs, even aquatic insects and things, because they can feel the movement of those very small critters in the water without even really seeing them. They can feel it in their face. So, it doesn't, just because you're seeing a large alligator doesn't mean he's out there only eating deer or only eating, a raccoon or a dog or something. He's also eating, he would certainly take a deer if he could get it, but he certainly is also eating, like I said, the frogs and toads and small fish and even aquatic worms and things like, really small prey that is what is making up a large chunk of the calories he's got to take in.
Well, Morgan, thank you for joining us tonight. We're almost at the end of the show, but one parting thought you want to give to folks?
Well, we already talked about not feeding alligators. I would also say that, feeding any wildlife in the water could potentially be feeding alligators. You're going to feed the ducks or the turtles or whatever. You could also be unintentionally feeding alligators. So, it is my advice that you just don't feed wildlife, especially in waterways, and appreciate it as a wild animal that is over there rather than coming towards you for food.
Absolutely. Well, Morgan, thanks a lot for being on the show. Phil, another wrap up here for our wild show tonight.
It was. That's great stuff. Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan.
Of course.
Thank you very much. And Major, thank you, sir. Have a great couple of weeks, and we'll connect with you in early August. That is SC Wild with Major Billy Downer. And Morgan, I missed Morgan's last name. Was it, I heard him mention it, but thank you, Morgan, for doing a great job. Very interesting stuff and very informative, and a word for the wise there, to be honest with you, about how to deal with the alligator situation. That'll do it. We'll see you tomorrow. Gamecocks in town.
Someone will be right with you. The Point.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
Grills, outdoor kitchens, fireplaces. Summer sizzle starts with Bart. This is 107. The Point.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. The House Oversight Committee heard testimony today from two IRS whistleblowers who claimed the Hunter Biden investigation was slow-walked through the Justice Department. IRS Special Agent Joe Ziegler says he was frustrated by how the Hunter Biden probe was handled.
I have outlined for you some instances in which assigned prosecutors did not appear to follow the normal investigative process, slow-walked the investigation, and put in place unnecessary approvals and roadblocks from effectively and efficiently investigating the case. A number of times we were not able to follow the facts.
Hunter Biden pleaded guilty recently to misdemeanor tax charges in what Republicans have derided as a sweetheart deal. The Biden administration is taking steps to crack down on junk fees, including those charged by landlords. White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports.
The president said the government is working with Zillow, Apartments.com, and AffordableHousing.com to combat surprise fees faced by renters.
They're updating their websites to